This is an unofficial testing of the book Tales from the JDH Corporation. It is not a finalized draft. The official version will be published at least partially on my official YouTube channel. If you're listening to this at a moment when it is out, the link will be in the description of this post. Where unseen threads entwine all things. Joquan the Hooligan presents Tales. Tales from the Javon Dominion Holdings Corporation by Joquan the Hooligan. Tales short form. Tales. Tales from the JDH Corporation by Joquan the Hooligan. Introduction. The objective was simple enough. Lay down suppressive fire, covering General Ghettofinger while he rescued the hostage. The hostage's name, Dr. Colden's. The operation was Operation Monetary Clinged Halls. We were just outside of the province in the state of Wayne, northeast sector, an area known as the Points. The Azurite 105th MM5 Wayne Northeast Division had us highly outnumbered. Standard procedure when you work for the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. Some folks will call it a bad situation. We simply call it Tuesday. The 105th decided that they wanted Dr. Colden's bad enough to outright kidnap him. The state of Wayne decided that they wanted Dr. Colden's back bad enough to hire us. Our PMC gained a reputation for efficiency throughout the nation of Magni Maris 5. I've been with the company since we incorporated in 1989. My name is Cedric Yulfano. I don't remember if Operation Monetary Clinged Halls was a success. I don't remember if the general successfully extracted Dr. Colden. As a matter of fact, the last thing I can remember before I got here is laying out on the grass, looking down at my intestines, thinking I'm about to die without permission. I'm in a world of shit. The transition from death to whatever came after wasn't what I expected. No tunnel of light, no flash of memories, no dramatic final breath. One moment I was bleeding out in the rubble of the 105th MM5 Wayne Northeast District, and the next I was standing in what could only be described as an infinite garden patio. It was infinitely obvious that I had died. No mortal eyes could lay claim to a place like this. Another thing that was abundantly clear to me, we are not alone in the universe. These are not just people who died on Novus Mundus. I looked down to see people no higher than my ankle, then looked up to see people as tall as a 12-story structure. This place stretches endlessly in all directions. Creatures of pure light drifted past like living auroras, their forms shifting between colors I don't have names for. Others defied description, entirely geometric shapes that pulsed with consciousness, beings that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, entities that might have been living sound or crystallized time itself. As I looked around to see if I could find a guardian or angel or someone that I could talk to about if I had to go to an orientation or some sort of courtroom, I noticed a small pond and decided to take a look at myself to see how I looked dead. Surprisingly, I looked pretty good. No halo of horns, no white robe, no harp, just me standing there in my JDH Jasper uniform. I was startled when I heard a large splash and looked up to see a cup large enough for me to take a bath in. Drawing from the pond, I looked up to see a large woman taking a sip. She looked down and smiled at me. "I'm sorry, little fella. I didn't mean to startle you. My name is Della, Cedric Yulfano, ma'am, but you probably know that already." "Now, how would I know that?" she asked. "Aren't you an angel or guardian or something?" "No," she replied with a chuckle. "I'm a singer. Let me guess, you just got here." "Yes, ma'am." Date of death, September 6th, 2008, I believe. She chuckled. "All right then, but you're looking for a veil watcher. It seems they're a bit busy today. Lot going on in the universe. I myself am from planet Earth. I was born in a place called Detroit, Michigan. Where are you from, little fella?" "I'm from the planet Novus Mundus, ma'am. I'm a citizen of the nation of Magni Maris 5, born in Port-Doe City, Port-Doe Province." "Interesting. How long did you experience life, Cedric?" "I was 110 Weichland when I died, ma'am," she calculated with her fingers. "So that means you were 22 years old." "That's right. I was born in the year 1986. But we don't age ourselves by years on Novus Mundus. We age ourselves by Wyclin. Della interrupted before I could finish the sentence. She laughed. I've spoken with many people from all over the universe since I've been here, including people from your planet, Novus Mundus, someone from a place called Ashari. Yes, that's far to the east. I've never been there myself. Always imagined going, however, Della continued. For those of us who lived observing time, the universe mostly keeps us in sync. We all recognize years. But there are some areas of the universe where they celebrate fluxes. Others celebrate quarters. Some cycles, some beats. I know on your planet you age yourselves with Wyclin. And despite your 90 Wyclin, I know that you look like an two-year-old because the cycle of life on your planet is different from Earth. Also because you remind me of my grandson. He was 22 years old when I died. Naturally, I was curious from this new enlightenment, and so I asked Della, on your planet, you don't age in quarters or beats? No, Della said. We go by the good old year system, just like a lot of other areas in the universe, depending on planetary variations and densities. We living beings of flesh and blood are a source of entertainment for the universe. We are entertainment systems. It establishes life all over itself, placing certain planets in what we on Earth call Goldilocks zones, just right for complex life, for it to experience itself through. The systems are usually the same: geographic locations, love, hate, peace, war. In these experiences, the universe gains understanding. With this knowledge, the universe continues to expand itself. Life experience cycles of the flesh, however, are always temporary. We are all simply pieces of the universe placed in temporary vessels. But the universe gives us all the same amount of time, just enough time for it to experience itself briefly through us. How do you know that, Della? My Veil Walker told me. You'll meet a Veil Walker soon enough, but for now, I'm just fascinated. I love talking with people from your planet. Why don't you tell me about yourself? Well, I am a soldier from Port-Doe province. Are you a Navy man? Della asked. No. Although we have a lot of mighty rivers in my province, the Jeffries, the Lodge, the Fisher, the Ford, a lot of sea merchants, sailors, and journeymen travel through. The names of your rivers in Port-Doe sound like the names of our freeways in Detroit. That's interesting, Della said pointedly. Our waters are very peaceful for the most part, I continued, dense with the energies of Kadast. Is that your religion? Della asked. More of a philosophy, I replied. Billions of people on Novus Mundus observe various religions, but trillions more of us lay our ideology within the enchanted stones: jade, azurite, lepidolite, jasper, and citrine. I guess you could say they're the dominant political ideas. Della added, we have similar ideologies in Detroit as well, Democrats and Republicans. I myself am a Democrat. I serve Jasper, I continued, along with my employer, the Javan Dominion Holdings Corporation. We are a private military company. Sometimes we are hired by government agencies and corporate entities to protect certain political, ideological, and financial interests throughout our region. Do your governments have armed forces on Novus Mundus? Della questioned. Very massive ones, ma'am, I replied. Then why don't the governments fight for their own interests instead of having private military companies do so? We do fight for our government's interests, ma'am, alongside many of the nation's MM5 designated branches under all 5 enchanted stones. War has always been a horrible thing on Earth, Della explained. It's not that bad on Novus Mundus, I continued. No worse than when the lion hunts the gazelle or when the cat hunts the canary. Our planet is populated in the quadrillions. There's always something to fight and die for. I don't understand how you guys could treat each other so poorly. You're so small and cute and adorable, you look like a cute little action figure. Well, it's not like we spend the day hunting and gathering each other, I continued. We have music, literature, recreation, enjoyment, pleasure, just like any other civilized society, I imagine. Well, I guess it would be a shame wasting time concerning myself more on the matter than you yourself are concerned with it. Perhaps it's not that bad of a thing for you. My nephew enjoys such things in his television and video games. I can see how the universe itself would find entertainment experiencing life on your planet. Would you like to take a walk with me, Cedric? The question shocked me. The woman must be insane. How am I supposed to keep up with her? If she would appear on my block back in the province, one step for her would easily clear 4 houses down. But she put her hand down by my feet, gesturing for me to climb on. And so I did, and she placed me on her shoulders and began to stroll. To say that I was taken aback by the sights I saw as she walked with me seated on her shoulder would be an understatement. Beautiful flowers of all sizes, all kinds of luscious furniture with beings just relaxing. Such a peaceful environment, something I've never seen before. The Veil Walkers seem to be very busy today. There are none scurrying about at the moment. You'll know when a Veil Walker summons you. You'll hear your name being called. Until then, I'm very curious about the tales of your Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. Please, Cedric, enlighten me. The Sound of Shadows. I've been with the company for a long time, since it incorporated in 1989. I always enjoyed telling different stories about the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. I entertain a lot of the freshly enlisted troops with these stories. One such story goes all the way back to the Kalamazoo conflict of 1975, before Doyon Pops Rand Sr. and his sons, along with various other members of the 194th, started the JDH. Pops served under General Curtis Shepard as a lieutenant for the 217th. It's a Central National Division. It was there that he met communications specialist James Howe. Sometime before the end of the Kalamazoo conflict, Pops was transferred from the 217th to the 194th. I'm not sure why, but he stayed in contact with many of his comrades who fought alongside him in the Kalamazoo conflict. Though James never enlisted with the corporation, he was there from the beginning. He helped us develop our security and technology infrastructure. He wasn't that far from our headquarters in the city of Finkel Acres, northwest sector of the province. He had a very nice apartment in the city of Dexter. He would do small computer jobs for various friends and allies. Eventually, in 2002, James caught the attention of Jermaine Miller, a man whose vision extended far beyond conventional thinking. Miller had founded Deaf Limited Sound Labs, a technology firm that specialized in something most people had never considered: acoustic intelligence and warfare. While the world focused on bullets and bombs, Miller saw potential in sound itself, the ability to wage war with frequencies and vibrations. James's expertise in communications technology made him invaluable to Miller's operations. Within the company's walls, surrounded by equipment that could turn sound into a weapon, James found his calling. His knowledge, honed during the conflict in Kalamazoo, now served a different kind of battle, one fought in laboratories rather than trenches. Success came quickly. James began purchasing stock in Deaf Limited Sound Labs, and before long, he had ascended to become one of the company's top shareholders. With his newfound wealth, he bought a large home in the state of Oakland, near the company's headquarters, and settled into a life that seemed worlds away from his military past. But the past has a way of calling, and James found himself thinking of old comrades. One name that kept surfacing in his thoughts was Doyon Pops Rand Sr. Though back during the Kalamazoo conflict, nobody called him Pops yet. He had been Lieutenant Rand then, James's commanding officer, a man who understood both the weight of leadership and the bonds forged in combat. During his tenure as a lieutenant under General Hank Voss, senior of the 194th, Pops was introduced to several families who owned companies of their own. Pops' family owned Rand Electronics. He would also meet the family owners of companies such as Elixir Corp. Incorporated, Voss Ventures, and communal combatant intelligence. In the interest of protecting Jasper ideologies, they joined together and formed a holding company called Javhan Dominion Holdings, a private military company that would contract with government and corporate entities. Eventually, other families would join in, such as the owners of United Industries and Lewis Law. James saw opportunity in this connection. Surely Pops would be interested in the acoustic technology that Def Limited Sound Labs provided. With samples and specifications in hand, James made the journey to Port-Doe province, carrying hopes of a profitable reunion. When James arrived in Port-Doe and met with his old commanding officer, the reunion was warm, but the business prospects were cool. Pops, though genuinely glad to see his former communications specialist, showed little interest in purchasing acoustic warfare equipment for the JDH Corporation. The technology was unproven, the applications uncertain, and Pops had learned to be cautious with his investments. But James hadn't traveled all this way to accept defeat so easily. He knew that Pops' son, Doyon Ghettofinger Rand, was also a major stakeholder in Javhan Dominion Holdings. Moreover, Ghettofinger had recently married Quetta Aquasius Rand, major stakeholder of the prestigious Lewis law firm out of McFarling. Aquasius had just earned her doctorate of juridical science from Madonna University in Wayne, and alongside her husband, now held significant stake in the JDH Corporation. I must admit, when Aquasius first joined the corporation, we all were a bit skeptical of the capabilities of this so-called A100 Prime. Somewhat quiet in her demeanor, she didn't strike us as what some would call a badass, until one day during an intelligence briefing with the 76 THMM-5 Port-Doe North Division, one of the lieutenants of the 76 decided that he wanted to grab a handful of cheeks. The shakeable kind, not the kissable kind. In what seemed like a microsecond, Aquasius grabbed his wrist from behind her back, twisting the body of the lieutenant around and smashing his face into a nearby Humvee. The lesson he learned that day? Some cheeks are for kissing, not pinching. The lesson we learned that day? Never judge a book by its cover. James would have preferred to meet with Mazzacor, the third of Pops's prophesied sons, and another founding member of JDH. Mazzacor's natural interest in technology would have made him a more receptive audience. But unlike Ghettofinger and Aquasius, Mazzacor wasn't an A100 Prime, the designation that marked the elite tier of global decision makers on Novus Mundus. Business protocol demanded that James approach those with the highest authority. James arranged for a dinner meeting at one of the high society Elias Brothers restaurants in the city of New Jefferson near the Doe River. The location was carefully chosen, upscale enough to signal the seriousness of the proposal, yet intimate enough for detailed discussion. Before dinner, the couple took the opportunity to visit Ghettofinger's older half-sister, Captain Angels, at the Gabriel Richards Naval Yard. Angels served in the National Navy but was considering starting her own naval PMC, a family business approach that seemed to run in their mother's bloodline. When they finally gathered around the dinner table, James presented his vision with the passion of a true believer. He spoke of acoustic warfare and psychological operations, of long-range acoustic devices that could disperse crowds or disorient enemies from miles away. He described sonic cannons capable of incapacitating targets without permanent harm, and acoustic holography, the ability to project sound in three-dimensional space, creating holographic audio that could confuse and misdirect. The technology was revolutionary, James argued. It represented a future of conflict precise, controlled, and ostensibly more humane than traditional weapons. But the Rand couple remained unconvinced, though for different reasons. Ghettofinger approached the matter from a purely fiscal standpoint, much like his father. The technology was unproven in real-world applications, the market uncertain, and the initial investment substantial. From a business perspective, it simply didn't make sense to commit significant resources to something so experimental. I don't know, James. It seems to me these kind of funds would be better spent giving escrow to the boys on furlough to use to buy booze and solicit whores. Are you serious? James replied. Of course not, Ghettofinger said. Whores are way more expensive than booze. I'm kidding, James, he said, smirking as he read the exaggeration on James' face. But the technology you're proposing is relatively new. It lacks the practicality and experience of actual warfare. I myself, in good conscience, cannot send my brothers or my boys out there to play lab rats. For example, is this technology susceptible to EMP bursts? What about harsh weather conditions? We do a lot of battle in the Puritan Mountains, as well as out in Macomb. Exposing our men to that kind of risk, what if the technology fails on us? It would just result in my father's booting my ass. That makes it pretty difficult to walk to the store. James, have you ever walked to the store with the old man's booting your ass? You already know that I served under your father in the 217th. Myself, James replied. Not only did I get the boot, I got the nail. I can't shit on the toilet. I have to use the bathtub, James said, smiling. But think of the lives you could save in battle. Think of the reduction in collateral damage with acoustic warfare rather than conventional with the messy ordnance that you're using now. I'm looking at these sonic cannons in this catalog here. The money we'd spend on just one, we could purchase 20 RPGs. It's a bit messy, yes, but just like the prom queen of my old high school, it's tried, true, and the thrill is cheap. Aquasias, however, raised concerns that cut deeper than mere economics. Her legal training had taught her to see beyond immediate applications to longer-term implications. She questioned the ethical dimensions of acoustic warfare, particularly what such weapons might do to civilian populations caught in conflict zones. The line between military target and innocent bystander could become dangerously blurred when the weapon was sound itself, invisible and potentially indiscriminate. Her objections carried the weight of genuine moral concern. As someone trained in law, she understood that new technologies often outpaced the legal frameworks designed to regulate them. Acoustic weapons operated in a gray area, where international law had yet to establish clear boundaries. James returned home empty-handed, his dreams of expanding deaf-limited sound labs' reach dashed against the practical concerns of his old military connection. But failure in Port Doe would prove to be the least of his problems. Shortly after that unsuccessful dinner, deaf-limited sound labs faced a crisis that made individual rejections seem trivial. The company was shut down due to ethical and financial irregularities, the very concerns that Aquasias had raised proving prophetic. The technology that James had believed would revolutionize warfare instead became the catalyst for his downfall. For his part in the company's operations, James Howe served a small bid in federal prison. The man who had once kept communications flowing during the chaos of the Kalamazoo conflict found himself silenced by the justice system, his expertise in sound and signal reduced to the echo of closing cell doors. And that's the tale of ambition meeting reality, of old soldiers trying to find their place in a world that had moved beyond the conflicts that defined them. James Howe had sought to transform the nature of warfare itself, to make conflict more precise and perhaps more humane. Instead, he discovered that the most dangerous weapon of all might be the illusion that technology can solve the fundamental problems of human nature. The acoustic devices he championed promised to wage war without bloodshed. But war, it seems, finds a way to draw blood regardless of the weapons employed. In the end, James learned that some sounds, like the closing of prison doors, carry their own kind of finality. Whether the technology he promoted ever found other applications, whether other companies took up where deaf-limited sound labs left off, I cannot say. But I do know this. In the quiet moments after the story was told, we all sat in silence, listening to the ordinary sounds around us, the hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, the whisper of air through the room, and wondered what weapons might be hidden in the frequencies we take for granted. That's the tale as I heard it. anyway. Make of it what you will. Anchors Away, a tale of pirates and paychecks. Another tale from the JDH archives, this one from 2003. Working for a private military corporation, you get used to unusual assignments, government contracts, corporate security, the occasional escort mission. It all becomes routine after a while. But every now and then, you get jobs that produce outcomes that sound like stories produced from the mind of a madman. When I hear some of the stories from my comrades at the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation, I can just imagine some crazy bastard making this all up. I can just imagine some stoner pulling up to a house with shag carpet, stepping out of a vehicle that smells like Panama itself, going into his kitchen, banging away at a typewriter. This is one of those stories, and it involves pirates. Real, honest-to-goodness pirates with helicopters and everything. Back in 2003, the Port-Doe Province Executive's Office was dealing with what you might call an unconventional problem. A faction of female lepidolite rogue pirates had been making a name for themselves throughout the region, and not in a good way. Their specialty was the robbery of gold reserves off major river shorelines, a very specific and very profitable criminal enterprise. These weren't your typical bandits operating out of some backwoods hideout. No, these ladies had style and sophistication. Their method of operation was almost military in its precision. They'd park their carrier vessels somewhere strategic, board their helicrafts, specialized choppers that they themselves improvised with special high-weight pulley rigs, commit their robbery with surgical efficiency, then flee back to their carrier and coast out of town before anyone could mount an effective response. The executive's office had finally had enough. They put out a substantial bounty on the whole crew, and that's where JDH came into the picture. The contract came with names and descriptions: Mavita Esme, Vesta Mione, Tessa Vimo, and Amira Voss, 4 women who had turned piracy into an art form. Al Flint and Quetta Q.G. Lewis were running a routine helicopter patrol over the Southwest Ford River in an area known as Claytown. Al is one of the prophesied members of the JDH. He and his family are known throughout his homeland as the Acts of Genesee. His father, Phil, is the owner of Elixir Corp. Inc. and one of the A100 prime signatures on the JDH Articles of Incorporation, archived at the nation's capital in the city of Alphasan in the state of Ingham. QG, well, she was Aquasis's younger sister. Her brother-in-law, Doyon Ghettofinger Rand, is another one of the A100 signatures on the Javan Dominion Holdings Corporation Articles of Incorporation. Along with that, her family ran the prestigious Lewis Law Firm in the city of McFarland. Needless to say, this was hotshot JDH brass in his helicopter. They were cruising over the Claytown area, doing their standard sweep pattern, when QG spotted something interesting through her field glasses. Docked along the riverbank was a carrier vessel that matched the description they'd been given for the pirates' base of operations. Al, QG said over the intercom, take us down a little and circle around. I want to get a better look at that vessel docked off the Ford. Instinctive cognition kicking in. As Al Flint brought the helicopter into a lower orbit, he keyed his radio for the Chamber Tent Center. Chamber Tent, this is Strobe Actual. There's a possibility that we have located Mavita Esme, Vesta Mione, Tessa Vimo, and Emma Ravost, requesting additional air support over Strobe Actual. This is Chamber Tent Center. What is your current location? Over. Al Flint tapped his finger against his forehead in annoyance. Central Surohira Desert Region Chamber Tent. Hovering low over Claytown. Over Strobe Actual, that'll be a negative. Air assets in that area are currently tied up in Oakwood Heights as well as the Hubbard area. Over. Can we utilize assets out of Springwells? Over. Al said, suppressing the kind of anxiety that would drive a man to drinking before 10 a.m. What part of no don't you understand, Flint? The N or the O. Chamber Tent. Over and out. That was no doubt Pops Doyon Rand Sr. He angrily tossed the radio microphone onto the cockpit dashboard. Looks like HQ just told us to fuck ourselves. Where A100's QG said, just get me closer to that floater to take a look at what's going on. Al complied, bringing their helicopter into a lower orbit around the suspicious vessel. It was definitely the right size and configuration, the kind of ship that could serve as a mobile base for helicopter operations. But confirmation would require more than just visual identification. Let me scan the frequencies, QG said, adjusting the radio equipment. If they're operating in this area, we might pick up their communications. Al broke into his legendary banter. Holy treasure chest, Batgirl. Those are the bandits that have been plundering the piggy banks of Gotham. Let's land the Bat Chopper and get those bitches. QG scoffed. You know I don't like that word, Al. Al chuckled. Well, hold on there, Queen Latifah. You don't have to get all who you callin' a bitch, UNITY, on me. You do realize that you work for a private military company and not a Girl Scout troop, right? That word is offensive to women, she replied. Women are offensive to women, he retorted. We've liberated your kind from the kitchens, giving you the right to vote, and how do you repay us? You go to dance clubs in scantily clad outfits and dance with each other. The kitchen in the bedroom, QG. The kitchen in the bedroom. She waved Al off as she scanned the frequencies. What happened next was like something out of a movie. As QG swept through the radio frequencies, they picked up chatter that made both of them sit up straight in their seats. There was a robbery in progress at the Premier Express Reserves on McGraw Avenue, exactly the kind of target these pirates specialized in. Al, we need to get to McGraw Avenue now, QG said, her voice carrying the urgency of someone who just connected all the dots. Roger that, my boot-wearing, bra-burning counterpart, Al replied, banking the helicopter hard toward the city. How do you want to play this? We can go chapter 12 on this, but be ready for anything. These aren't amateurs we're dealing with. As they approached the Premier Express Reserves, they would indeed stumble upon some very nefarious activities. The pirates were there, and they were in the middle of loading their armored helicopters with gold bars. It was brazen, efficient, and about to become very expensive for them. What followed was the kind of aerial combat that most pilots only read about in avionic tabloids. The pirates had two heavily armed helicrafts, both loaded with stolen gold and crewed by women who clearly knew their way around military-grade equipment. We've got two bogies, heavily armed, carrying stolen cargo, Al reported over the radio as he maneuvered their helicopter into an attack position. Movita Esme, the apparent leader of the pirate crew, was piloting the lead helicopter. She was good, damn good. Her evasive maneuvers showed the kind of training that doesn't come from civilian flight schools. Vesta Mione was her gunner, and she opened up with what sounded like a .50 caliber mounted weapon as soon as the JDH helicopter came into range. Taking fire, Al called out, throwing their aircraft into a diving spiral to avoid the incoming rounds. QG, are you going to get in that gunner seat, or should I pull out my catcher's mitt? QG was already there, her hands working the controls of their own mounted armament. Engaging primary target, she announced, sending a burst of fire toward the pirates' lead helicopter. The second pirate helicopter, piloted by Tessa Vimo with Amara Vost as gunner, tried to flank them from the east. It was a textbook pincer movement, the kind of tactic that would have worked against individuals less codastically densed, but Al and QG were well-trained, experienced JDH practitioners, and they developed the kind of intuitive coordination that comes from years of operating in high density. As Medea's helicopter moved to flank them, Al anticipated the maneuver and dropped their aircraft suddenly, causing the pirates to overshoot their intended firing position. With a deep concentration, Al was able to temporarily alter the atmospheric pressure surrounding the propellers of the enemy craft, a feat he wouldn't be able to maintain for no more than a few seconds, but just long enough to throw off the flight pattern of the enemy chopper to line him up for a shot. "Now, QG!" Al shouted. QG didn't need the encouragement. Her return fire caught Medea's helicopter in the tail rotor, sending it into an uncontrolled spin. Immerse managed to lay down covering fire as Medea fought to maintain control, but the damage was done. The second pirate helicopter was forced to make an emergency landing in a nearby parking lot. With one of their aircraft down, the remaining pirates found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. Movida Esme was still a formidable pilot, but she was now facing two Jasper A-100s while piloting a helicopter full of heavy gold bars, affecting her aircraft's performance. "They're trying to make a run for the river," QG observed, as the remaining pirate helicopter began moving toward the waterfront where their carrier was waiting. "Thanks for the report, Captain Obvious," Al replied grimly, pushing their helicopter to its maximum speed. What followed was a running battle over the rooftops of Port d'Eau Province. The pirates' helicopter, weighed down with stolen gold, couldn't match the speed and agility of the JDH aircraft. Vestamione continued to provide covering fire, but her shots were becoming increasingly wild as Hildy struggled to maintain stable flight. The end came when Al managed to position their helicopter directly above the pirates' aircraft. QG, demonstrating the kind of precision shooting that had earned her a reputation throughout JDH, put a controlled burst into the pirates' main rotor assembly. "Target disabled," she reported as the pirate helicopter auto-rotated down to a hard landing near the docks. By the time the authorities arrived, all four pirates were in custody. Their helicopters were secured, and most of the stolen gold had been recovered. The Port d'Eau Province Executive's Office was pleased enough with the outcome to pay the full bounty without any of the usual bureaucratic delays. Al and QG posed for the required photos with the captured pirates and recovered gold, playing their parts in the public relations aspect of private military work. The local news ran the story with headlines about sky pirates brought to justice and JDH gives them hell. But here's where the story gets interesting for those of us who knew Al Flint personally. As the authorities were loading the recovered gold bars into their transport vehicles, Al managed to slip one of the bars into his helicopter. Just one. Mind you, not enough to be noticed in the official count, but valuable enough to make the whole operation considerably more profitable from his personal perspective. Now, I'm not saying what Al did was right or wrong, that's between him and his conscience. But I will say this. When you're risking your life to recover other people's money, and when the people paying you are bureaucrats who've never been shot at, it's easy to develop a flexible relationship with official procedures. QG never said anything about the missing gold bar, though I'm pretty sure she noticed. That's the thing about good partners in this business. They understand that loyalty sometimes means knowing when not to see things too clearly. The pirates, for their part, were eventually processed through the legal system. Movida Esme and her crew had skills that were too valuable to waste in a conventional prison. So, rumor has it, they were offered alternative arrangements, the kind that involved government service and classified assignments. As for the missing gold bar, well, let's just say that the bottle of scotch that Al bought at Viceroy Liquor Store that week was a bit older than the one he bought last week. And when you consider that he and QG had just engaged in aerial combat against armed pirates over a major city, most of us figured he'd earned every ounce of that gold. The lesson here is that sometimes the most important part of any mission isn't what goes into the official report. Sometimes it's what happens in the margins, in the small moments when good soldiers make practical decisions about practical problems. And sometimes, just sometimes, those practical decisions involve making sure that the people doing the dangerous work get a little more compensation than what's listed on the original contract. That's the story of how two JDH operatives brought down a crew of sky pirates and how one gold bar found its way into an unauthorized libation fund. QG's moral compass would point nowhere near that gold, but a couple of shots from that bottle of scotch was definitely north on her map. Make of it what you will, but remember, in this business, the line between heroism and pragmatism can be thinner than you might expect. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, a hustler's gambit, a tale of desire versus discipline. Some of the best lessons in business come from the worst business decisions, and some of the funniest stories come from watching smart people do incredibly stupid things. This is one of those stories about ambition, opportunity, and why you should always read the fine print, even when there isn't any. This tale takes us back to 1997, when some of the current JDH leadership was still figuring out the difference between opportunity and disaster. It involves three members of the Rand and Maxwell bloodlines, Dottore and Tazakai Rand, along with their older cousin, Chucky Maxwell. And it all started with motorcycles, illegal street races, and the kind of entrepreneurial thinking that can either make you rich or get you killed. Picture this: South Finkel Acres, the Cloverdale Strip on a Friday night. The air smells like burning rubber, Newports and Black & Miles, alcohol, and of course weed. And there's that electric feeling you get when a bunch of people are doing something they probably shouldn't be doing. Illegal street racing has always been big business in Port-au-Provence. Not just the racing itself, but everything that surrounds it. Mechanics offering quick repairs, folks setting up barbecue grill, selling plates, bookies taking bets, DJs selling their mixtapes, and always people looking to buy things that help them forget they had real jobs to go back to on Monday. Dottore and Tazakai were there cheering on their younger brother Diggy, who had quite a reputation on two wheels. Diggy was fearless on his motorcycle, the kind of rider who treated the laws of physics more like suggestions than actual rules. As the Rands watched their little brother tear up the strip, Dottore's entrepreneurial mind started working. "Look around," Dottore said to Tazakai during a break between races. "You see all these people? They got money in their pockets, they feeling good, just kicking it, right? And what do people do when they want to kick it?" Tazakai, who was a senior operative with the JDH Corporation by this time and understood both opportunity and risk management, caught on immediately. "You're thinking about moving some product at these races." "Exactly. Marijuana specifically. Look at this crowd. Half of them are probably smoking anyway, but they're buying from whoever happens to be around. I can get the FA mob down here. We could set up something regular, reliable, quality product." It wasn't a bad idea, actually. The racing scene was perfect for that kind of business. Lots of cash flow, people in a party mood, and enough noise and distraction that transactions could happen without drawing unwanted attention. "I got the perfect connection for us," Tazakai said. "Who?" Dottore wondered inquisitively. He glanced at his younger brother with a sly grin. "Chucky? Chucky?" Dottore questioned with a skeptical scowl on his face. "You full of shit. Ain't no way in hell Pops is gonna allow the company's chief strategist and intelligence officer to—" "No, not Chucky Hoy you hard on," Tazakai interrupted. "Our cousin Chucky." "Oh, Chucky Maxwell. Right," Tazakai said pointedly. Tazakai knew that if they were going to do this right, they needed to talk to someone with connections and experience. That someone was their older cousin, Chucky Maxwell, who operated out of the city of Scone and had built himself quite a reputation in various entrepreneurial ventures. That part of the Maxwell family gained a nefarious reputation throughout the city of Scone and outlying communities. In the streets of Scone, Chucky was known as Superman. His younger brother, however, a bit more villainous in his nature. They called him Doomsday. Chucky was family, but he was also notorious. The kind of man who commanded respect through a combination of business acumen and the subtle implication that disappointing him might be hazardous to your health. He'd built his operation from nothing, and he didn't tolerate amateur hour from anyone, family or otherwise. "We need to drive up to Scone and have a conversation with Chucky." Tazakai told Dottore, "If we do this, Pops can't find out about it. I can bring in a few of my sergeants like Reginald Cruz, but this will have to be primarily a FA mob operation." Dottore agreed, though he was already nervous about involving Chucky. Family business could be the best business or the most dangerous business, depending on how professionally you handled it. The drive to Scone gave Dutoro and Tazakai time to plan their pitch. They'd worked out the basics. The racing scene provided a perfect customer base. They had the connections to move product throughout the Finkles, and they understood the risk involved. What they hadn't worked out, and what would serve as junction to the malfunction, were the specifics. The Rand brothers arrived at Chucky's estate, a large ranch, including adjacent land to a large northern field, just off of Cherry Hill and the northern area of Scone. "This isn't far from the Flint Manor," Tazakai said. "I've never been to Al Flint's house," Dutoro replied. "That's because you're not a member of the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation." "Genius," Tazakai answered sarcastically. As they arrived at the horseshoe driveway, their older cousin, Elizabeth, and younger sister of Roquel Maxwell, by happenstance, so happened to be at Chucky's that day, on a patio adjacent to the front entrance, preparing what appeared to be salmon fillets. "Smells good," Tazakai said, greeting his cousin. "They'll be ready in a few," Elizabeth said, returning the greeting. Dutoro scowled. "I prefer for my meals to have legs rather than fins." Tazakai chuckled. "Cool, more for me." There, Cousin Chucky greeted them at the door. "As I live and breathe, 2 of the 5 dancing suns have come down to earth," Chucky said, greeting his younger cousins. "I didn't hear any stories on the news about a meteor strike." "Shouldn't you boys be in space doing the JIT or something?" Tazakai laughed. "Looks like you've lost some weight there, cuz." "It's good to see you," he said in a hug. Chucky smiled back at his younger cousin. "Well, it's good to be seen and not viewed. What brings you boys to Scone? You mind if we chop it up with you confidential under the hat?" "Sure thing, cuz. Step into my office." When they sat down with Chucky in his office, a back room of a legitimate business that served as cover for his less legitimate enterprises, they made their case with the enthusiasm of young entrepreneurs. "The racing scene is wide open," Dutoro explained. "Consistent customer base, regular events, people with disposable income. We can move product every weekend at the races. I've got crews throughout the Finkles for the weekdays too." Chucky listened with the kind of attention that successful businessmen give to proposals that might make them money. He asked practical questions. What kind of volume were they thinking? How would they handle security? What was their payment timeline? Here's where things went sideways. In their enthusiasm, the brothers had focused on the opportunity without nailing down the specifics. When Chucky asked about quantity, they gave vague answers. They were thinking maybe a van load to start with, enough to test the market without overcommitting. Chucky, being a businessman who thought in terms of efficiency and economy of scale, had different ideas. "If you boys are serious about this, you need to think big. Small loads mean small profits and more risk per transaction." What the brothers thought was going to be a modest trial run turned into something much larger. Instead of the van load they'd been hoping for, Chucky provided them with a few trucks full of marijuana. Not small trucks either. We're talking about enough product to supply the entire racing scene for months. Dutoro and Tazakai looked at those trucks and realized they'd stepped into a much bigger game than they'd planned for. But they were committed now, and Chucky was family. So they took the shipment and headed back to set up their distribution operation. To their credit, the brothers set up a solid distribution. Dutoro ran the FA mob out of Littlefield Township north of Finkel Acres. His mob lieutenant Wade Griffin could stash the goods at a spot they had on 21st. Dennis James and Coco Lawhorn would be in charge of Dotoro's distribution. Tazakai would cover startup costs, as well as provide additional security with his captain with the JDH Reginald Cruz. With a network stretching from East FA to Littlefield Township, the racing scene at Cloverdale Strip became their primary market, just as they'd planned, but they also established secondary markets throughout their territory. The money started flowing immediately. The racing crowd was exactly as receptive as they'd predicted, and word spread quickly that the Rand brothers had quality product at fair prices. For a few weeks, everything was going according to plan. Success, as it turned out, was the brothers' downfall. With money coming in and trucks full of product available, the operation started getting sloppy. Tazakai, along with their older brother, Ghettofinger, would always throw parties practically every weekend at a location on the Javin Dominion Holdings Corporation headquarters known as the Garage. It was an abandoned car dealership before the JDH purchased it. For a while, it served as the temporary base of operations before the chamber tent building was constructed. Some operations were still coordinated from the garage, but mostly it served as a recreation area for off-duty JDH personnel. JDH leadership, particularly Pops, looked down on smoking weed. But if you got rid of everyone who would blaze occasionally, you wouldn't have much of a workforce. So they looked at the activity as a necessary evil. But with a larger supply on hand, Tazakai began turning these parties into Cheech and Chong movie sets. Big parties. The kind of parties where discipline goes to die and business sense gets smoked up in clouds of your own inventory. Instead of treating the marijuana as business assets that needed to be moved for profit, it became party supplies. Instead of focusing on sales and reinvestment, they got caught up in the lifestyle. Dutoro watched in horror as their profit margins literally went up in smoke at Tazakai's increasingly elaborate parties. We're supposed to be selling this stuff, not smoking it. Dutoro kept reminding his brother, but by then the party train was rolling too fast to stop. The worst part was that in all the celebration of their early success, they had lost track of the most important part of any business relationship, paying your suppliers. Weeks had gone by, and they still hadn't sent Chucky Maxwell his money. When reality finally penetrated the haze of their party lifestyle, the brothers realized they were in serious trouble. They'd smoked or given away a significant portion of their inventory, spent most of their profits on parties instead of setting aside money for Chucky, and they still had trucks full of product that they now couldn't move fast enough to cover their debt. Dutoro was, in his own words, scared shitless. Chucky Maxwell wasn't the kind of man you kept waiting for payment, and he certainly wasn't the kind of man you wanted to disappoint with excuses about parties and poor inventory management. We have to go back to Scone, Dutoro told Tazakai. We have to bring him what money we've got left and return the rest of the product. Tazakai, finally sobering up to the reality of their situation, agreed. They loaded up the remaining trucks of marijuana, gathered what cash they had left from their brief but profitable venture, and made the drive back to Scone with the kind of dread usually reserved for condemned men. Arriving at Chucky Maxwell's ranch for the second time was nothing like the first. The enthusiasm and optimism were gone, replaced by the cold sweat that comes with knowing you've disappointed someone who has the power to make that disappointment permanent. Chucky, Dutoro began, we've got some of your money, and we're bringing back the rest of the product. We had some problems with the operation. The younger brother, in the midst of giving his explanation, was drowned in fear as their older cousin began reaching in his cabinet. To his relief, he was retrieving a bag of better-made potato chips. Upon listening to his younger cousin's explanation, Chucky reached in a drawer at his desk, pulled out a knife, and placed it in front of him. Tazakai's terror alert level went to orange before Chucky pulled out an apple and started slicing it. Chucky listened to their confession with the kind of calm that's more terrifying than anger. They explained about the parties, the poor inventory control, the money they'd spent instead of saving. They braced themselves for the kind of response family disputes in their line of business sometimes required the unexpected response. What happened next surprised both brothers and probably saved their lives. Instead of the violent response they'd been expecting, Chucky started laughing. Not the kind of laughter that comes before something terrible happens, but genuine amusement at the situation. You boys ain't ready to start selling weed yet, he said, shaking his head with what seemed like genuine affection for his younger cousins. Maybe you guys should start selling crack or try rapping. It was all love, as they say in the family business. Chucky understood that the brothers had learned a valuable lesson about the difference between opportunity and capability, between ambition and discipline. The debt was forgiven, The relationship remained intact, and everyone walked away wiser. This story serves as a perfect example of why ambition alone isn't enough in any business, legitimate or otherwise. Dottore and Tezuka had correctly identified a market opportunity. They'd established proper supply lines and distribution networks, and they'd successfully penetrated their target market. What they hadn't done was maintain the discipline necessary to treat their venture as a business rather than a lifestyle. They'd gotten caught up in the thrill of success and forgotten that success requires constant attention to the fundamentals: inventory management, cash flow, debt service, and supplier relationships. The irony is that if they'd approached the marijuana business with the same discipline they later brought to their work with JDH, they probably would have been very successful. The market was there, the product was good, and the demand was consistent. But sometimes the most valuable lessons are the ones that come from failure, especially when that failure doesn't cost you your life or your family relationships. Dottore and Tezuka learned about responsibility, discipline, and the importance of keeping business and pleasure separate. The aftermath, Wycliffe later. Both brothers would apply the lessons from this failed venture to their legitimate careers. Dottore eventually joined JDH and brought the same entrepreneurial thinking that had identified the racing scene opportunity, but tempered with the discipline he'd learned from watching their marijuana operation go up in smoke. Tezuka continued his career with JDH and became known for his attention to detail and his insistence on proper procedures, qualities that probably developed from watching their informal business venture collapse due to lack of proper management. As for Chucky Maxwell's suggestion about selling crack or trying rapping, well, let's just say the brothers took his advice about finding business ventures more suited to their temperament and skill set. And fortunately for all involved, those ventures turned out considerably better than their brief career in botanist logistics. The lesson here isn't about the dangers of illegal business. It's about the universal principles that apply to any venture. Ambition gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. Opportunity means nothing if you can't execute consistently. And family relationships, whether in business or in life, require the same respect and professionalism as any other important partnership. Most importantly, when you're in business with someone, especially family, you pay your debts and you honor your commitments. Everything else is negotiable, but your word and your reliability are the foundation of any successful operation. That's the story of how two prophesied sons learned that sometimes the most expensive education comes from the cheapest mistakes, and how a failed marijuana operation taught lessons that would serve them well in their legitimate careers. And that is why we always emphasize discipline and attention to detail in JDH operations. Because whether you're running a street hustle or a military operation, the fundamentals remain the same. Know your business, respect your partners, and never let the celebration start before the work is finished. The Veil Walker's Revelation. As Della walked, carrying me on her shoulder through the infinite garden, I found myself lost in the rhythm of her steps and the wonder of sharing stories from my world. I began to feel an unexplained connection with her, something that had always been there but was only recently revealed. Hours seemed to pass, or perhaps eons. Time moved differently in this place, as I recounted tale after tale of the JDH Corporation, of Pops and his prophesied sons, of Al Flint's golden pragmatism, of Dottore's street wisdom, and Chucky Maxwell's forgiving nature. Della listened to each story with the fascination of someone discovering a new form of music, asking questions that showed she understood the deeper currents beneath the surface events. When I told her about James Howe's acoustic warfare dreams, she nodded knowingly. When I described the sky pirates and their helicopters, she laughed with recognition. And when I shared the tale of the brothers' failed marijuana venture, she shook her head with the universal understanding of ambition meeting reality. "Your world sounds so much like mine, Cedric," she said as we paused beside a crystalline fountain that sang in harmonies I'd never heard. The names are different, the technologies vary, but the hearts of your people on Novus Mundus, they beat with the same rhythms as ours on Earth. Before I could respond, a voice echoed through the infinite space, not heard, but felt in every atom of my being. Cedric Yulfanot. Did you hear that? I asked. Hear what, sweetie? Della responded. It sounded like someone said my name. The voice was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It simply was, carrying the weight of stars and the gentleness of morning dew. That's your veil walker, Della whispered. I didn't think it would take that long for one to show up. You haven't been here long enough. No one besides me knows your name so far here. Carefully lowering me to a platform of living light that materialized beneath her hand. Thank you for sharing your stories with me, little soldier. They were more precious than you know. The being before me defied every attempt at description. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, sometimes appearing as pure light, sometimes as geometric patterns that hurt to contemplate directly, sometimes as a figure that seemed almost human, but stretched across space-time itself. When it spoke, the words formed directly in my consciousness. Cedric Yulfanot of Novus Mundus, soldier of the Jasper ideology, servant of the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation. Welcome to the space between spaces. Sir, I said, falling back on military protocol because it was all I had. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I am neither a sir or a ma'am. I am a small representation of a pulse between everything that ever existed and nothing that ever came to be. On some worlds, referred to on some planets by vessels as pulse. On others, referred to as the infinite. Some say gods. Most on your planet call what I represent Kodas. The Veil Walker's form shifted, becoming more comprehensible, a small figure in robes that seemed woven from starlight. Before we proceed, there are truths you must understand about the nature of existence, about your world, and about the connections that bind all things. With a gesture, the space around us transformed. I found myself standing on the shore of a vast ocean that reflected not water, but scenes from countless worlds, Earth, Novus Mundus, and realms beyond imagination. Your planet, Novus Mundus, and Della's world, Earth, exist on opposite sides of the universe, the Veil Walker began. Yet they are quantumly entangled, woven together by forces that transcend physical distance. Every action, every story, every heartbeat on one world resonates with its counterpart on the other. That's why I began. That's why Della was so intrigued by your tales. Yes, you and she are connected at the level of consciousness itself. Your spiritual essence is a physical manifestation, along with thousands of other beings from your world that are entangled with hers, as are thousands of other beings across both worlds. The universe has paired you across impossible distances because your experiences, though different in detail, serve the same cosmic purpose. The ocean of worlds rippled, and I saw scenes from Earth playing out scenes that looked remarkably similar to the stories I just told Della. Street races in Detroit, soldiers in distant conflicts, families building businesses, the eternal dance of ambition and consequence, the size difference between your peoples, the time dilation that sinks Earth years to Novus Mundus Wyklin. These are not accidents, the Veil Walker continued. They are features designed to allow the universe to experience itself through different scales and perspectives. You and Della, though you lived parallel experiences, perceive them through entirely different frames of reference. But why? I asked. What's the point of all this complexity? The Veil Walker's form brightened, and I sensed something that might have been a smile. Because, Cedric Yulfanot, you and every conscious being in existence are not meant to be permanent physical entities. You are small parts of the universe itself, temporarily inserted into vessels of flesh and blood so that the universe can experience itself subjectively. The quantum entanglement between Novus Mundus and Earth is a thick thread. The planet Earth serves as the vision. The planet Novus Mundus serves as the manifestation of what was observed, the simultaneous comprehension and manifestation of what was observed on Earth. The quadrillion of beings on your planet are physical manifestations of each individual on Earth, including life circumstances that was, is, or has yet to become. Thousands upon thousands of you are quantumly woven to a single individual on Earth, providing what you call Kodos enhanced perspectives to itself. Through these multiple, quantumly entangled perspectives, the universe itself is informed, entertained, and continues to expand. The revelation hit me like a shockwave. We're all pieces of the universe. The universe is consciousness exploring its own nature through countless perspectives. Every joy you felt, every fear, every moment of brotherhood with your JDH comrades, every lesson learned from failure, these are the universe coming to know itself through your eyes, your heart, your temporary existence. I thought about my short life, 90, Wyclin, 18 years, and suddenly understood why it had felt so intense, so meaningful despite its brevity. That's why everything felt so important, so vivid. Precisely. The universe gives each vessel just enough time to contribute its unique perspective to the greater understanding. Your stories, the tales you shared with Della, they matter because they represent one facet of consciousness experiencing itself through the lens of your world, your culture, your individual perspective. The Veil Walker gestured toward a path that seemed to lead deeper into the infinite garden. But first, I was guided to a small pond whose waters reflected not images, but pure possibility. Before you continue your journey, drink, the Veil Walker said. I knelt beside the pond and cupped the water in my hands. The moment it touched my lips, I gasped. Whoa! The water was more than refreshing. It was revelation itself, understanding flowing through me like liquid enlightenment. Every story I'd told, every experience I'd lived, suddenly made perfect sense within the vast tapestry of existence. The Veil Walker's voice carried gentle amusement. It's not because this water is phenomenally refreshing, Cedric. It's because it represents a different kind of experience for you, just as the universe seeks to experience different manifestations of itself through every conscious being it creates. I looked up at this cosmic guide, understanding flooding through me like the waters of that impossible pond. My life, the JDH, all those stories, they were the universe experiencing itself through the lens of a soldier from Novus Mundus. And Della's life as a singer in Detroit was the universe experiencing itself through the lens of an Earth human. Your stories resonated with her because they were variations on the same cosmic themes, the same universal experiences of growth, conflict, love, loss, and discovery played out across different scales and in different contexts. Will I see her again? In ways you cannot yet comprehend. You and she were never truly separate. The quantum entanglement that connects your worlds, your spirits, transcends the boundaries of individual existence. Her essence is woven into yours, as yours is into hers, as both are woven into the infinite tapestry of conscious experience. The Veil Walker began to fade, or perhaps I was the one moving toward something new. Your tales will continue, Cedric Euphanaut, not as memories, but as part of the ever-expanding understanding that drives the universe to know itself more completely. Every story shared, every connection made, every moment of recognition between kindred spirits across impossible distances. These are the threads from which existence itself is woven. As the garden around me began to transform into something beyond description, I felt a profound sense of completion. My brief life as a soldier, my death in service to the JDH, even these moments of storytelling in the space between worlds, all of it had served a purpose greater than I could have imagined. The universe had experienced itself through my eyes, my heart, my temporary vessel of flesh and blood. And in sharing those experiences with Della, in that moment of connection across the vast distances of space and consciousness, the universe had come to know itself a little more completely. The water from that cosmic pond still tingled on my lips as I stepped forward into whatever lay beyond the veil, carrying with me the stories of Novus Mundus, the warmth of connection with a kindred spirit from Earth, and the profound understanding that every moment of existence, no matter how brief, contributes to the infinite symphony of conscious experience. Behind me, I could sense Della continuing her own journey through the infinite garden, carrying my stories with her as I carried hers, two threads in the cosmic tapestry, forever entangled across the vast reaches of space and time. Thus ends the tales of Cedric Euphanaut, soldier of the Javhan Dominion Holdings Corporation, citizen of Novus Mundus, and brief vessel for the universe's exploration of itself through the experience of war, brotherhood, and the eternal human or perhaps universal spirit that finds meaning in even the smallest acts of connection and understanding. Thus ends Tales from JDH Corporation. But the saga continues. The stories you've just heard serve as an introduction to the Woven Phrase series, a fictionalized mythological world produced by Joquan the Hooligan, all rights reserved.